Because of its versatility, its unique properties, and its relatively cheap price, plastic has become ubiquitous to our everyday life. All plastics are made of chemicals, including polymers, additives to make products stronger, softer, colorful, or fire-resistant, or unintentionally added substances such as solvents, cleaning agents, or impurities from manufacturing or recycling. Over 10,000 chemicals have so far been associated with plastics. From these, over 2,400, 1 in 4, are of potential concern to our health and our environment. These include chemicals that can mimic, block, or alter the actions of hormones, reduce fertility, and damage the nervous system, such as heavy metals, phthalates, bisphenol A, biocides, certain flame retardants, UV filters, or per- and polyfluoroalkyl substances, PFASs, also referred to as forever chemicals because they do not break down, can accumulate in our bodies and remain in the environment for generations. Some of these chemicals are listed under the Stockholm Convention as persistent organic pollutants. Harmful chemicals can be released from plastic throughout its entire life cycle. Workers can be exposed during plastic manufacturing. Harmful chemicals can also be released during the use of plastic products or at the end of life, in particular when waste is not properly managed, finding their way to air, water, and soils. Harmful additives can be transported across the globe and released to the environment far from their original point of use. When plastic is recycled, additives can make recycling challenging and limit material circularity by contaminating new materials. If we continue with business as usual, the total amount of plastic ever produced could reach 34 billion tons by 2050. Fragmentation and gaps in legal frameworks must be addressed to cover chemicals along plastics' life cycles. We must close the plastic tap, phase out unnecessary and major additives of concern, promote and develop safe and sustainable alternatives. We must improve waste sorting, collection, and management to increase circularity and ensure harmful substances do not contaminate new products through recycling. Raise awareness on workplace safety and exposure reduction measures. Strengthen governance at all levels and empower communities. Enhance access to information on resins, chemical additives used along the product value chain. Develop more robust methodologies to assess human and environmental exposure. And encourage research to better understand the impacts of chemicals associated with plastics. To protect our health and environment, the global community must act now to support a toxic-free circular economy. Together, we can beat pollution.
Hello and welcome to People on Earth. I am Makanaka Nyakpanda. Nowadays, people are using plastic endlessly because it is economical and easily available. However, the rise in plastic use have been the build-up of plastic objects and particles in the environment, adversely affecting mankind, wildlife, and aquatic life. In this installment of People on Earth, environmental engineer, geoscientist, and sustainable development strategist, Mr. Simon Bere, help us to take an in-depth analysis of plastic pollution, one of the challenges facing the Earth today. Welcome to the program, Mr. Bere.
Thank you, Makanaka.
Sure. So let's get right into it. What is plastic and what is it made of?
Yes, plastic is a material that is made up of a byproduct of what we call hydrocarbons. So we are talking about the crude oil. When we talk about crude oil, we are talking about this material, liquid material, which was formed years ago through the compression of organic material. So this is then taken out and through oil, what we call oil, crude oil. And then from there we produce different types of products. Like we talk about the diesel, that we talk about fuels, we talk about some grease, the grease that we normally lubricants. But also then we also produce a product, the raw material that is used to produce plastic. So it's a specific chemical that is called the benzene ring. That is a chemical, a hydrocarbon, which is made up of carbon and hydrogens. They form a ring structure. So that is the basis for the basic molecule that is used to produce plastic.
Okay, so having said that, why do people prefer to use plastics other than other materials?
Yeah, there are three main advantages of using plastic. The first one is that plastic is waterproof. So water cannot pass through the plastic. So if you put water inside the plastic, it cannot then move out of the plastic through the plastic layer itself. So that's one. Being waterproof means water cannot permeate through the plastic. The second one is the flexibility of plastic when it compares to other things like metal. So it's very flexible. So you can turn it and form it into so many different forms. And then the third one, in terms of plastic, is lightweight, because it's not as heavy as other material like plastic. So those are the three main reasons why people prefer to use plastic.
Okay, so thank you very much for saying that. Now we move on to plastic pollution. What is plastic pollution, and what and the causes of plastic pollution?
Yeah, when we talk about pollution, we are talking about the existence of something in an environment where it is not wanted or where it is causing adverse effects. So pollution by itself is when we find plastic in the wrong places, where it is not supposed to be found, and also where it is having a negative impact either on the environment or on the biota. We're talking about the biological life. That's when we talk about pollution.
Okay, and what are the main causes of this pollution?
Yeah, you'll find that the problem with the plastic is that when we use the plastic, some of it is what we call, you use it once and then you dispose it. You cannot reuse some of the plastic. But also because plastic is very cheap, people can buy the plastic, use it once and throw it away. So it's very easy to throw away plastic. And then the second reason why plastic pollution is a problem is there is no microbes or a natural pathway by which plastic can break down into its original components. The same way that we have, if we have got wood, we have got leaves. If we leave them in the environment, they can break down by natural processes back to their original components. So eventually over time they can disappear. With plastic it doesn't disappear. It can break down into small pieces, but it remains plastic in its original form as plastic, causing what we call microplastics, which we can also then consume ourselves, and also animals can also start consuming that plastic if their plastic is found in oceans, like what we're having today.
Okay, like you're saying, plastic does not break away. So how is plastic affecting the environment?
I work with a lot of waste management institutions. Like if you travel to any what we call dump sites in Zimbabwe, we don't have most of these landfills. They are not engineered, they are not well designed, but where we throw away our waste, especially from the cities, what remains in most of these places when you go is plastic. The other things that we throw away, like our leftovers of food, they can always decompose. Eventually they will disappear, maybe after a year, 2 months, 3 months. The sadzas and the vegetables, they disappear because they are used again by the environment. But plastic, nothing can reuse plastic. So it remains a very big challenge. And if you go to any of the dump sites that we are talking about, go to Pomona, go to any town where you see where we throw our waste, the remaining dominant waste becomes plastic. And because it is light, when there's some winds, that plastic is then carried away, and then it goes tossed into the environment. It can go for very long distances in the atmosphere, flying away from where it's supposed to be disposed. So it's a very big problem. And then most of the plastic is carried from inland and it goes into the oceans and causing serious problems that we're having of plastic pollution in the oceans as well.
Okay, maybe I would want to ask that, are there any types of plastic? Like you're saying from England, plastic is being carried to the ocean. What type of plastics are these, if you may want to mention them?
Yeah, we have three main types of plastic when we categorize plastic. We have what we call the light plastic. Sometimes we just call it LDPE, low density plastics. And then we've got what we call the PET. PET is the type of plastic that is used for containing the food that we consume. Like if you take your drinks, your fizzy drinks, if you look at most of the bottles on oil that we consume, they are made of that type of plastic that is called PET. Then we've got what we call HDPE, which is high density, which is also the plastic that we find sometimes in our cars, or the plastic material that we find in our cars. It's another type of plastic that is called HDPE.
Okay, sure. So I see you have a lot to talk about. Let's talk about it after the break. We shall be taking a short break. We will be back soon. Do stay with us. Welcome back to People on Earth. We are talking about plastic and the environment. Let's talk about the connection between plastic pollution and climate change.
Some people may not see the connection between plastic and climate change, but there's a very direct correlation between plastic and climate change. Remember, I said that plastic is made up from crude oil. So the process of making plastic involves processes which also create other hydrocarbons, like the fuel that we produce, and also the whole process of producing plastic is involved with emissions. So the byproducts and the processes that are used for making the plastic, they create emissions, especially carbon dioxide, which is the main emission that is driving climate change. So also remember, plastic is made up of carbon, and we have so many areas where people are burning plastic. They burn the plastic instead of putting it away. So there's a lot of plastic that is also burnt, and that plastic, when it is burnt, it sends the carbon dioxide and other pollutants into the atmosphere, and these are the ones that are driving climate change. That's why we are saying we need to do what we are calling energy decarbonization. So we are trying to do away with any sources of energy or any material that will end up sending carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. So plastic has got a very direct link to climate change.
So what are the hazards of plastic to human health and ecosystems?
Yeah, when plastic is burnt, it produces some very small particles. Some of these particles are called dioxins and benzophoranes. I'm not going to talk too much about the chemistry, but there's very small particles. So when people breathe the air that is coming from burning of plastic, those small particles, one, in their physical form, they affect our lungs, but too small to be coughed out when we breathe or to be sneezed out. So they get into our lungs and they start affecting our lungs. So they reduce the amount of air spaces that are available. So it creates breathing problems. But also they cause direct toxicity. And then they can create problems like cancers. You know, most of these cancers that we're having today, especially if they are lung cancers, they are being caused by those pollutants, toxic pollutants that are related to the burning of plastic.
Earlier on, you talked about countries such as Britain throwing away plastics in the oceans. So plastic pollution in oceans is a topical issue. So as Zimbabwe, are we in any way contributing to this?
Yes, quite honestly, you know, the challenge with countries like Zimbabwe, there's not much research on trying to find exactly how much plastic, the fate of plastic when it gets into our environment. We just know we throw away our plastic, but very little research is carried out to track the plastic that we throw away and find out where it is going. But in general, some of the plastic that is found in the oceans is coming from our countries like Zimbabwe. Because remember, our rivers, they drain into our oceans. When you look at our ecosystems like Miami, if we have plastics which are being carried from Harare, they get into Lake Chuero, but from there they escape, and then they are carried down Miami River, they then connect to Zambezi River, they go to the Indian Ocean. So definitely there's a proportion of plastic that is found in the oceans that is coming from countries like our Zimbabwe, because they are connected. The water that goes to the oceans comes from, part of it is coming from Zimbabwe through our catchment systems and our rivers.
Okay, so having said that, what's the best way to manage plastic waste?
The first one is to avoid plastics, especially banning, especially the thin plastic. It's the biggest problem, because with the bigger plastics, like the high-density plastics bottles, we can manage them easier. But the thin, light plastic that we use once, it has to be banned. So I know in Zimbabwe, some of this plastic has been banned, but sometimes what is difficult is then enforcing the ban. The second one is to take the plastic and use it for other purposes. Sometimes that plastic is taken and it is used to produce energy. You burn the plastic in a controlled way, then you start producing energy from the plastic. You are now stopping it from going to the oceans, although I agree that sometimes if you don't then use systems that can clean the air when you burn the plastic, you then end up polluting the environment. But sometimes it's also used pellets. You produce pellets from the plastic, and then the pellets are used to produce energy. At least you manage, you know where your plastic is going.
Sure. And any other ways we can manage plastic waste? Prevention
of using the plastic. So it's banning the plastic, certain types of plastics, especially the thin plastics, which are the biggest problem in terms of dealing with them once they are produced. And then second, we are talking about not using, our habits, shopping habits. When we go to our shops, most of the time, each time we go and buy some goods, we also buy a plastic. So we are asked, do you want a plastic bag? And we are always accumulating the plastic bags. So it's better to reuse a plastic bag. Carry your plastic bag to the shop. Instead of each time you want to go and buy, you buy a new plastic. The third one is you need also to use non-plastic bags, which you can reuse. For example, you can have a cloth bags. And also now people are now also using biodegradable plastics, which can degrade in the environment. But these are new ones. But the most important ones in terms of is avoid using the plastics unnecessarily, or try to change. Don't reuse the plastic. Instead of each time you go and buy, you are buying a new plastic.
Okay, thank you very much for that. We shall be taking a short break. We will be back soon. Do stay with us. Welcome back to People and Earth. We are discussing the use of plastic and its impact on the environment. And now we are in the third segment of this program. And we want to talk about the plastic-free life. What can we do to achieve it?
The plastic-free, yeah.
Yes, so the plastic-free life.
The first thing is changing the behavior of people when it comes to the use of plastic. Some people, when we talk about the dangers of plastic, most people, they don't really appreciate what we mean. So it's education and awareness that is critical. That's the first thing that we need. And the second one, we hope that the education will then change behavior around the use of plastic by individuals. Then the third one is, I think it's at the national level, it's the policies and also legislation that can control the use of plastics. So, for example, the banning of plastics is there, but sometimes it's very difficult to enforce the bans in terms of using plastic. So these are the three main things I think are critical for plastic-free life. Then the last one is research on some of the degradable material that can be used instead of plastic, so replacement of the plastic with other biodegradable material.
Okay, so any alternatives to single out or throw away plastics?
Yes, alternatives are using something that is not plastic, where you are using plastic. For example, if you are talking of carriage bags, you can now use cloth, or now we've got new material that is also using something that has got similar properties to plastic, but which is not plastic. For example, we have got biodegradable material for packaging, which is being made from organic material like sugarcane. For example, that's what I know. Some of them, they're already available on the local market. And also the issue with the plastics is we need to follow, when there's a ban for plastic, we need also to comply with the bans, because sometimes the problem is that we don't comply with the regulations around plastics. So those are some of the issues that we can do to help solve the problem of plastics.
Okay, so you're saying that people do not comply. So what are you doing to raise awareness so that people get to know about plastic and plastic pollution?
There's a lot of awareness that is happening, but you know, awareness is never enough until people start changing their behaviors, because sometimes it takes a long time for people to hear the same message over and over again before they can then change their behavior and adopt what is being said. So there's a lot. I know Emma does quite a lot in terms of trying to educate on the issues of plastic and all, but enforcement is not always a very easy thing, given that we are dealing with individuals who are doing this in their private lives. So you can't really control what they're doing with the plastic in every space of their life.
Okay, thank you very much for that. So as a recap and just a wrap up, what can one do as an individual to reduce plastic pollution and promote a plastic free life?
Yeah, the first as an individual is to be the example yourself in terms of managing plastics. And it's behavioral change. That is simple. The easiest thing is to change our behaviors. Like I've said before, most of our plastic that we have is packaging plastic. That's when we go and buy our food, we have packaging. So sometimes you buy shopping behaviors. I've gone to some people, when you buy, for example, you've got tea bags. There are two types of packaging that I have seen. Some of them is just a plastic and then you've got tea bags inside. Or then the other one is you've got the tea bags and then you've got a plastic and then around there's also a box, you know. So in terms of managing, then you start asking yourself, is this box really necessary? What is the functional value? It's not serving any purpose because already there's a plastic and these tea bags are in a plastic, so they are safe from anything like water and things like that. So these are some of the things when you go and shop to think about the packaging, which is better to buy, because you are buying the same tea bags, but they are packaged in a different way. Some of them, they are carrying dead package, which then become a problem, like later, plastics. So that's one thing, it's changing behavior. Like what we've said already, when you go and buy, make sure, try by all means to use packaging or carriage bags that are not made of plastics. There are many people who make these bags that are made of cloth. Why not just carry your bag each time you go and shop? And then you buy and put your things in the bag instead of each time you go and shopping, you are coming back with another plastic. So these plastics are accumulating. Eventually, they become a problem because they are, mark my words, they will end up in the environment and they start creating problems.
Thank you very much for sharing with us. I hope people from home have learned how to use plastics and change their behavior. Thank you very much, our viewers, for watching People on Earth.